Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Ghost Education 101. I'm your host, Dr. Tiffany Frazier, and as always, I'm joined with my incredible co-host, Dr. Heather Lee. Heather is still recovering from oral surgery, so I'm going to be leading tonight's discussion. Tonight we have a fantastic guest. Who's joining us. He's someone who truly embodies and balances the research, investigation, and preservation. Everybody, please welcome Steve Dills, lead investigator for Transcend Paranormal, and he's also a featured investigator on the Ghost Finders. Steve has spent years working alongside paranormal researchers, historical locations, and nonprofit organizations to help preserve and promote our shared haunted history. He's passionate about conducting paranormal research that's respectful, ethical, and backed by solid documentation. And tonight we're going to be diving into the many aspects of paranormal investigation, including research, collecting data, helping clients, preserving historical locations, super important, and so much more. We'll also discuss how proper research can strengthen our findings, enhance credibility, and even uncover hidden stories that history forgot. So grab your notebook, settle in, and join us for a night of insight, conversation, and maybe a few chills along the way, because I think the three of us combined, we probably have some pretty cool stories. Everybody, please welcome Steve Dills.
Hey, how are you guys doing?
Good, good. Thank you for coming on the show and chatting with us tonight.
Yeah, first, thank you for having me again. It's been a while, and I remember when Heather and I helped a very small bit, but Heather and Philip and everybody started Ghost Education 101 and everything. So
That's right. Were you one of the founding members?
one of them.
Okay. I know there were a lot, so
There were, and we were busy. We were very busy for quite some time.
that's
So
awesome. Well, I mean, I'm very thankful for you guys for starting it and for, Heather, she's kept it going. And I
yes.
think it's so important because it truly is like this show is an educational program. And
Hmm.
I think that is just not just for the paranormal field, but just people in general, just the general public wanting to learn, even if they're not wanting to really dive into it or get into it, just
Hmm.
having a place where they can go and get reliable information is so important, especially in
Yeah,
today's world.
it's very useful because there's a lot of content that is
Yeah.
more of the look at me kind. It's like,
Yeah.
let me promote, something, buy something from me. So it's
Yeah.
nice to have, more of a let's share something kind of conversation.
Yeah. So tell us about yourself. How did you get into paranormal? How did that all get started for you?
Yeah, so I got into the paranormal young.
Okay.
I got in um when I was in elementary school. We actually so let me step backwards in time here. Um, I was born up north, grew up just outside of Philly, so I spent a lot of kind of my formative years there. And in elementary school, my father had a job opportunity that he couldn't pass up. It was one of those like, okay, we got to do this.
Mhm.
So very quickly, I found my entire life put in, boxes and in the back of a truck, racing 60 miles an hour down the highway to Virginia, which
Oh,
is where I
yeah.
am now. And so, I was, pretty upset, right? All of my external or my aunts and uncles and cousins, my grandparents, all lived, up in Pennsylvania and Jersey and whatnot. And so that's where my friends were. My life, everything that I understood about the world was there. And so when I moved to Virginia, it was, you know, it was a huge shock to the system, right? It's like might as well have been living on Mars because it just felt like it was so far away. Um,
Yeah.
and this was before cell phones were in everybody's pockets and everybody had email addresses. So I really felt very disconnected from my previous life, if you will. And so I think because of that, I was very um, I guess just angry mixed with depressed and anxiety because I've got to, meet new friends and, this and that. And so I think all of that mixed into pretty much moving into the first location that we could find realistically. Because it was such a quick move, my parents picked any house they could find. And it
Mm-hmm.
was a brand new build. Nobody had lived in it prior. And it was a very, very weird layout. But my parents realized, hey, you know what, we're only going to be here for like a year or two. They had, continued searching for something. They just needed something static just to get us anchored to Virginia. And so they bought this house. We moved in, and I think just being in that state I was in was like fresh meat, perfect target. And
Mm.
so I had a lot of activity that just consistently ramped up over 2 years living in that house. And it started off with um, my name being whispered in my ear at night to even louder, where I would wake up to hearing it. Um, Gosh, what else? I would hear conversations outside of my door, bedroom door open and close, the whole nine
Wow.
yards. So
Mhm.
much so that I was actually seeing things in the house, including outside of it. And one of those weird things was a doppelganger of our family dog. Uh,
Wow.
I saw that a couple times too, which is very odd. So 2 years of this, and I was, for that 2 years, I hated living there. Like I was, I did not want to go home, that sort of thing. So finally, 2 years, we move, and nothing happens at the new house.
Mm-hmm.
There's no activity, and I'm like, oh my god, finally. But I guess those 2 years of me exploring this and coping with whatever was going on really made me question, what is going on.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I got a car and was living on my own, so my mom wasn't worried that I was out until like 2 a.m. in the morning, in some abandoned place doing weird things, that I finally started to explore the paranormal. And so I joined a group, the Richmond Paranormal Society, which I still actually help co-run today. But um, at its peak, it was part of a meetup group, and it had somewhere between 20 to 30,000 people in it. So that is
Wow.
a large group. And so what would happen is, let's say we found a place to locate, or a place to investigate. Somebody would line it up, and they would say, hey, listen, I've got this location. First 10 people, first 20 people, whatever that
Mm-hmm.
respond get access.
I
And
see.
so that was really good for me, at least, to get kind of, I guess, my feet wet in the
Mm-hmm.
paranormal, and understand, is this something that I'm really actually interested in pursuing, or is this a spur of the moment thing? But the more that I investigated, the more I realized, like, hey, I should probably trust the people that I'm in this room with. If I'm in this abandoned, like, facility, for the lack of a better term, and
It's a little important.
yeah, and like we're gonna go and turn all the lights off now. Like, is the person next to me going to, like, defend me if something happens, or are they going to shank
Exactly.
my wallet? I don't know.
Yeah.
So, so I wanted to find a little bit more familiar territory. So, uh, chatted with a couple of very like-minded folks, and there were about four of us, and we started Transcend Paranormal.
Wow.
And so that's what has been, I've been kind of building that since 2010, and what started off as four members is, gosh, somewhere around 30 today. Um, and we partner with historical locations
Mm-hmm.
throughout Virginia and some surrounding states to help them fundraise. And that might be for the historical preservation and restoration of a historic location, which is a huge part of who we are. But we also do educational, help with educational programming, as well as we want to, support community outreach. And we also do some fundraising for, like medical nonprofits like that, like Scares That Care, for example, that help
Right.
fundraise for families that are, in need with some sort of illness or whatnot. So um, that's our fun way of kind of, these places let us get to investigate, and then we get to give back to the community, and
Yeah.
let them investigate and explore the paranormal, fairly safely.
Mm-hmm.
But then also that money goes directly into that location or into a good cause,
Right.
as opposed to lining somebody's pocket. So that's a little bit of a mix of how did I get into the paranormal and why do I have a paranormal team now, because it's all kind of tied in
That's
one big
awesome.
one big journey. So
Yeah. I have a question. So, do you think, because you focus heavily on historical research, do you think that do you think that your uh, experiences in the house that you moved into in Virginia, first of all, did you ever do any research on that property afterwards, like later on? Do you think
I
that stirred your interest into historical research?
I think it's a mix, and
Mhm.
I can kind of pinpoint as to where I really found a passion for history. Hey Sandra, I was very good in school at like what I call regurgitation, and it's literally like, okay, you're going to be tested on these couple of pages, and I would just read it. I would memorize it for the next day or two, pass the test, and then I'd forget everything about it. And so that was a very quick and easy way for me to learn and get by with most things, including history. And I didn't spend a whole lot of time on it. When I got into the paranormal, my first foray into it wasn't history. It was actually what are the spooky things going on around us,
Right.
and can I find a way to kind of you know I guess in a way not necessarily experience but experiment with that. So my first kind of dip into that was very purely, that's some weird stuff, that's cool, let me go look at it.
Mhm.
It's like when you take a stick and you poke something, you don't know what it is, and you could die, but you could also be fine, and we're dumb, so we just do it anyways, right? uh no, but it wasn't until I investigated a place called Henricus Historical Park
Mhm.
that I found a passion for history through investigating. And we had gone in there and we started investigating. And I honestly had reached out previously, for the very first time to see if, hey, can we investigate here? This will be our very first historical location to investigate. And one of my good friends and now one of my teammates, John Pagano, took a chance and was like, "Yeah, sure, weird guy who's emailing me about ghosts. Let's do it." And so, we get out there, we investigate, and one of the very first EVPs that we recorded there was of a female saying hello in Virginian Algonquin. And Algonquin is
Mm.
a huge region of language that was spoken up and down the East Coast.
Okay.
But there was a very specific dialect that was part of the Powhatan that lived at Henricus, or the area right near Henricus. And
Okay.
Henricus is important because it is the second English settlement in the United States.
Okay.
Jamestown became unsafe, and so they decided, you know what, we're going to move upriver a little bit. They found this perfect little peninsula, and the city of Henricus was founded. And it survived for quite some time, and it was, you know, fairly peaceful until March 27 or 22nd, 1622. And that is known as the Indian Massacre. And so that
Mm.
is the day that the native Powhatan Confederacy actually attacked a number of settlements throughout the region, including Henricus. And what would have been most likely, well, actually, what would have been the site of the very first college in America, as well as most likely the capital of Virginia, if not the country, because it's so close to where kind of Richmond is, both situationally on a river. Um, so it may have even kind of been running for capital. So it was a very important location,
Wow.
just very lost to time. And so I share all this because we're sitting there, listening to this recording, and it is a Virginia Algonquin of some girl saying hello. And God, I can always barely remember what it is. Um, I can't remember the actual word, but I will after this. By the way, like when we get off the podcast, be like, that's the word. Um, but it was really cool because we had to like figure out like who, what is this? Like this does not sound like English, and so we actually had a somebody that spoke Virginia Algonquin. She was one of like three people at the time in the world left that spoke Virginia Algonquin, and
Wow.
unfortunately she has passed now. So there was a gentleman that had worked with her to record as much as possible, but she was a direct lineage of this, and she listened to it and she's like, oh yeah, somebody's saying hello, friend. And that was just really, really cool because now
Yeah.
I had this path to partner the paranormal and ghosts with, oh my God, like there's history tied to this. It's
Hmm.
not just like, this creepy thing floating through a room. There is a reason and a purpose it's there now.
Hmm.
So why? Why is that there? Can I explore that? Can I understand that? And so that's what drove me kind of from creepy thing to creepy thing with context, if that makes sense.
That's
It,
pretty cool. That's awesome. That's one of the examples I use with people when they try to argue with me that EVPs aren't real.
hmm
I tell them, we get EVPs with accents. We get EVPs, speaking different languages. We
hmm
get EVPs, especially when we're using the spirit box, we ask the spirits, hey, if you're comfortable and if you can, please, you can cuss at us. We're fine with that. It's how we
hmm
prove that this is working, this is real, so that
Yeah,
is
and
really awesome
I mean, walking
that
in
you have
there, and I looked it up real quick while you were talking. It's Wingapo,
Wingapo.
is the term,
Okay.
and it's hello friend. It's not just hello, right?
Yeah.
It's hello friend. So it's very, it's a welcoming kind of approach to a greeting. Um, and I didn't walk onto that site knowing a single word of Virginia Algonquin, let alone
Hmm.
Algonquin or what the language was that the local population talked. Um, so it's not something that we were going to be able to even walk on site and be like, this is it. Yeah, we're just
Yeah.
going to make this up. Like it is something very specific. We had to have somebody else listen to it
Hmm.
to say, oh, you know what, I know exactly what that's saying. Um,
Yeah.
and it's really interesting. Like it's hard to find flaw in that when it's
Hmm.
pretty. I mean, I've heard some EVPs where I'm like, I have no idea what that's saying.
Yeah.
We both might be nuts, but I have heard some where I'm like, this is yeah, that's pretty
Yeah.
much it.
Yeah.
So I don't
It's
know.
definitely one of those things where, I've always had an open mind even before I got into this work. Um, and I believed that people were hearing things, and I believed that some of them were intelligible.
Mm-hmm.
But until I went on my first investigation and started reviewing evidence and actually heard EVPs, especially on my own personal camera that nobody else touched, I set
Yeah.
it up myself.
Yep.
It's mine. I downloaded the footage and everything myself. There shouldn't be anything there, and yet there was.
Yeah.
So
It's much
it,
more closer to home, and you can
yeah.
prove. And that's why a lot of people ask me, if I post evidence online and
Mhm.
on YouTube and everything, and we have from time to time, we have certainly, but it's not something that I religiously do, because I do feel like some of the paranormal is is so difficult to believe or comprehend,
Yeah.
that you do kind of need to be there. Like you said, you set up everything. Nobody else was talking in that room
Hmm.
because you were there. It's
Yeah.
hard to reinforce that with somebody through story and say, listen,
Yeah.
I caught this and I was the only person in the room. But
Yeah.
you might think, well, was there a car? Was there somebody in the next room over? Was there somebody downstairs?
Hmm.
And it's so hard to build that certainty into take a look at this.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
so I get it. I understand, but I definitely feel like it's something you've got to
Yeah.
physically get out there and kick the tires on.
I always tell people, I'm like, hey, if you want to go out, let me know. We'll find a place,
Let's go be
you
weird
know?
together.
Yeah. How has your work with historians and caretakers changed how you think about evidence versus the experience?
The experience of the investigation.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Um, I mean, I think it adds gravity and depth to an
Hmm.
investigation. I have been at locations where I've investigated maybe once, twice, and that's it. And I've never been able to go back. And sometimes it's because it's so far, or it's just a lot of effort, or maybe you can't get back there anymore. Um, and it's still fun right? It's still fun to get to explore places, and I'm sure all three of us here have paranormal bucket locations that we all just really want to go to that one spot at least once,
Yeah.
you know. And I think that's great. I think that there's nothing wrong with that. I also think that there is a certain value in being able to go back and investigate a location time and time again,
Yeah.
because I think that when you do go back and look at your evidence, it becomes not something that's like, hey, look at this, this is really cool, to wow, look at this. How can I use this on my next investigation? Can I
Hmm.
follow up with this? Can I take this piece of evidence and do something with it to build another, maybe another piece of evidence comes out of that, or maybe you get to piece together a puzzle, a little tiny little piece. Um, and that's not easy.
Yeah.
That's not easy at all.
No.
It is one thing to go and be like, okay, I'm going to listen to all my audio. Oh my gosh, that's so neat. Let me send it to my friends. But then to take it the next step further and understand, why did that happen,
Yeah.
um, and how can I utilize this? Um, and we do that. We have the opportunity to do that. We investigate a place called the Hanover Tavern,
Hmm.
and full disclosure, I was the president of the board there for a number of years. I'm still very actively involved. I was actually up there this evening for an event, right before the podcast, and so I am very, very intimately tied there. What does that also mean? That over the 10 years of me being part of that nonprofit board, I've had 10 plus years of being able to investigate that building.
Hmm.
Um, so I get to take past evidence into my investigation. So I get this really nice blend of, the best of both worlds in a sense. I can use, the outcome of one to feed into the next piece, which is the following investigation.
Right.
Um, so I think there's value in both the
Hmm.
experience and the evidence. I think if you have the ability to take one with you into the next, it just adds so much depth to it and so much more meaning.
Yeah.
And you get to follow up as if it's a conversation as opposed to an interrogation.
Hmm.
Uh, so I like both. I think they both have their fair place in the
Yeah.
paranormal world.
Do you find that, for example, I'm sorry, it's called, what is the tavern called again?
Hanover Tavern. It's in
The
Hanover.
Virginia. That makes sense. I can remember that now.
Mm.
Do you find that the spirits there, like, I'm guessing they've gotten to know you, they're very comfortable with you. Do you find that over the years you're able to get evidence more easily? Or is it still kind of like, I don't know what I have. I have to go back through all this footage and really dig
There's
deep to find it?
there's still a bit of fishing.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean, like
Hmm.
you still have to, hopefully you get something, and sometimes you don't. I do think that it's a lot easier to walk in there, and I do think that let's all assume one big thing, that ghosts are our ancestors, right? And
Hmm.
we have to assume that. We have to assume that ghosts are dead people, because otherwise we have no idea what we're talking about. Um, and I by the way, I love to explore what is the definition of a ghost. It's always fun. But um, if we do that and we say ghosts are dead people, then that also means that we should theoretically be able to build a relationship, right?
Hmm.
Like a friendship, right? And so I think that there is some reciprocity when it comes to being somebody that is, haunting a location, still alive, right? Like us going and investigating the same places over and over. There's really no difference than a ghost that's also there, right? But I think that being able to build that does help. I don't think it is. I don't think it's like a magic button where I can just be like, all right, go ahead and talk.
Right.
But it does give me some, I guess, some like a cheat sheet. I can go to certain places of the building and I can say, okay, well, usually this is what happens here. And usually this person likes to talk about this or these things or this music. Or if those things come up in conversation, I have a better chance of saying, oh, I know who that is. or whom I believe that is, because I don't even know who that is, right? Um, so I think it has some value.
Yeah. Awesome. How do you handle cases where your pursuit of evidence or what you have captured conflicts with the wishes of the families or the people running a location?
Um, I think it's ultimately whomever owns the property is the owner of the property. They're going to be able to do as they please,
Hmm.
and some of those are hugely negative things. I've seen historic properties demolished because one person thought it was an eyesore, and others saw beauty in the decay, but didn't really matter because we didn't own it. So,
Yeah.
right or wrong, there is a level of respect that has to be given when it comes to, okay, well, this is what I want done.
Yeah.
Now, I will say that for Transcend, it's been quite some time since we've had a private case.
Hmm.
Um, and I say that because we used to have just kind of a catch-all. It was just like, you want us to come out and investigate, call me, email me, call her, email her, send a text message, smoke signal, pigeon, whatever. And we'd be like, oh, let's do it, let's figure this out. And then we stepped back and kind of started taking a little bit more of an analytical approach and look at it, and so we started interviewing people right off the bat.
Mm.
And it was funny because we'd still get all this influx of people come, help me investigate, come look at my house, come look at my house. Um, and we'd say, sure, but we want to interview you and talk to you first about it.
Yeah.
And we would lose a huge chunk of people right there.
Yeah. We find the
Um,
same thing when we tell
yes.
people we are going to set up a Zoom call prior, or you have to fill out the inquiry form.
Yep.
Probably 95 at least percent of them just drop off the radar.
Yeah. And so that's exactly what happened with us too, is we went from, you know, okay, you can contact us in any form or fashion that you want, but you are going to still get to, we need to interview you, to the same thing where we now have an intake form. You
Yeah.
go and you fill out the basic list of questions. And I've had, I can count on one hand how many people have filled that out. And I'm not saying that as a negative thing. I just think it helps hone in on the folks that legitimately feel like they have something that they need assistance with.
Right.
Because I've also shown up to locations or to homes to quote unquote investigate. And I had one woman, so I, you know, we're taking this very seriously. We show up, we get there at time, um, knock on the front door. This woman opens the door. She's got a glass of wine in her hand, and she's like, "Okay, and are you guys are the ghost hunters?" And we're like, "Yeah, we're so and so. We're here to investigate as you requested." And she welcomes us in, and sitting on the kitchen table, or sitting at the kitchen table, not on, at the kitchen table, is another couple of women. And she explains that those are some of her neighbors and friends, and they thought it sounded fun, so they wanted to make a night out of it. So they were all there having wine. And then she asked me at what time is the camera crew getting here, and what time
Oh my
are they going
goodness.
to have makeup and all this and that and this and that. And that's when I realized that this wasn't about investigating and helping somebody. This was about entertaining somebody.
Right.
And so we packed up. We packed up and
Yeah.
we left, because
Yeah.
I wasn't going to sit there and be somebody's entertainment. The whole point of this was to research and understand and help somebody. Uh,
Yeah.
so cases have definitely dropped off, dramatically, and usually the folks that are interacting legitimately want some conversation and want some validity, and to be told, hey, no, you're not crazy. Um,
Yeah.
but we approach it very respectfully, and we approach it the right way, because there's a lot of people don't realize that there is a lot of um, red tape, legal red tape around
Mhm.
investigating, and it's very important that you know your local and state laws when you get involved in some cases. You know, one case that we had, somebody was taking And this is where it gets serious, because you have to stop taking this as a hobby, and more of a responsibility. When you start investigating and you need to go through the list of, okay, well, are you taking any medicines? Could some of
Yes.
these things create hallucinations? Could some of these, these two medicines here cause these two things that are going on at home? And some people aren't comfortable asking that, and some people aren't comfortable answering that. But it is also,
Mhm.
it's very important, because how do you go through with your investigation to truly understand what's going on without asking tough
Well,
questions?
it's a safety issue too, because you're going into
It
someone's
is.
home and you have to understand what's happening there.
You do. And the other part to that is, if aren't comfortable asking that question, you go in there, you investigate, and you say, you know what, there's a ghost here, and then you leave, right? Because you don't live there. You get to go home, you get to go to bed, in your own house, cuddle up with your dog, whatever it is that you're doing. These folks have to live with this,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
They don't get to go home from there. It's a demon. They get to live with it, and I've seen
Mhm.
so many teams do that. But what happens when that person then turns around and does something? Let's say they hurt themselves or somebody
Yeah.
else, and claim, well, you know what? This person over here told me it was a fill in the blank.
Yeah.
And now, guess what? You are legally liable.
Yeah.
So, you've got to be very careful doing this. I know everybody that talks to wants to help. They want to help. They want to help. And I think that is very valiant. But you know, you also have to be careful. You have to protect yourself when
Yeah.
you go into these investigations. You
We
have to.
have those same questions on our intake form, and we always, we get a lot of people who will say, I'm not comfortable answering some of these questions. And we just have to say, this is for our safety. If we're going to come
Mhm,
to your place of residence, we have to understand what is happening in the family dynamic, in
mhm.
your personal life. This is just something that we have to understand because, like you just said, there are a lot of medications that can cause hallucinations.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, yeah.
it just, that's just the nature of certain medications. And so we have to take that into account. If somebody comes to us and they seem like they're suffering from severe mental um, trauma, or they've got some just severe stuff going on, we don't take the case because that
Mhm.
is so far out of our realm. We can't take the chance.
Yep.
We're not
Yep.
qualified to deal with something like that.
And it's not that you don't want to help. It's
Exactly,
just
we just can't.
yes, it's
Yeah.
incredibly difficult, and
Yeah.
it can be unsafe for everybody
We
involved.
had one lady over the summer contact us, and I spoke with her briefly, and there was a lot of trauma going on, and I had to tell her. She kept asking because I also do a lot of spiritual coaching, and I specifically work with people to help them regain their personal power. And she really wanted to work with me, and I said, I would love to work with you, but there are things that I need you to work through first
Mhm.
because you're not at that stage where you're ready to move forward here.
Yeah.
This is beyond my area of expertise. There's only so much I can do. I
Mhm.
And it hurts because like you said, you want to help them, but at the same time, will I even be doing them good
Yep.
knowing that they have all of this stuff going on and I'm not qualified to work with it?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's healthy to know your own limits, and
Yeah.
I think that there's nothing wrong with that. So,
Yeah. When people come to your public events, how do you go about teaching them? Like, do you have certain types of equipment that you prefer to like put in their hands the first time around and like show them how it works, or how do you go about that?
we kind of leave it up to dealer's choice.
Okay.
So we split everybody into groups, right? And
Yeah.
we try to keep it very, I've been to events and investigations where they shove like 20 people into like a very small room.
Yeah.
And so we try our hardest not to do that, because we want people to have the experience, right? And have a good time. And so, we split up into probably groups of 10 is about our max. And those 10 people might have an entire building. to investigate. So like it was actual space, right? Um, and typically what we'll do is we'll have, two people leading that group, and each of those folks are people from my team that have equipment. And so, we kind of leave it up to the group as to, I guess their flavor of the evening, if you will, right? It's a create your own adventure, because we don't necessarily want to, I don't want to go in there and be like, this is the right way to do it. Nope, that's the wrong way to do it. Don't do that, because there are, there's certain, I guess, mechanisms to utilizing certain pieces of equipment. For example, if we go and say, hey, we're going to do an EVP session, rule number one is everybody has to be quiet. And we explain, why does everybody have to be quiet, right? Because it's kind of like when you ask somebody, how do you make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and then you say, well, where do you begin? Do you grow the wheat? And so it's kind of a similar thing where we're like, okay, well, let's give you some of the good guidelines around utilizing this piece of equipment. But we definitely like people to explore and say, well, what if I took this piece of equipment and I set it over there?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe other people have done that 100 other times, but maybe nobody has, and they're just thinking outside of the box because we're approaching it with 10 plus years of investigating a certain location. And now there's a fresh set of eyes. So we don't,
Right.
I don't try to like say, hey, this is how you investigate. We try to allow folks to explore on their own, and then not like on their own, guided. And we provide kind of the support and the
Yeah.
direction with some of that. So you want to try dowsing rods? This is how, theoretically, this is how they work.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if somebody said, well, Steve, do you believe in dowsing rods? That's a different question, because I'm going to be
Right.
very, I'm gonna be like, well, what kind of answer do you want? Do you want an open answer? Do you
Yeah.
do you want me to, to make you feel good? Like, what is it? But you know, we'll be very honest. It's just I want people to come to the table how they feel comfortable coming to the table. And
Mm-hmm.
then once they're there, then we can say, hey, listen, I know that you have an idea about how that works. Let's walk through it, how it actually works. I don't want to bombard people with like, nope, nope,
Right. Yeah.
because I think that there is that gatekeeping almost, in a sense, that
Oh,
that
for sure.
can keep people away, and I hate seeing that. So
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I'm always open with people. People message me and they'll ask how certain pieces of equipment work. And, I'm not an expert in every single piece of equipment. If I don't know,
mhm.
I'm going to direct them to somebody who I know, um, who can give them a better answer than I can.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the gatekeeping, I think across everything in life, gatekeeping's it's gotta stop.
Hmm. I agree. But,
What's one of your favorite investigation tools
um, hmm.
or pieces of equipment, I should say?
I personally have always leaned a little bit more towards the science side of the paranormal.
Yeah. Mhm.
And again, I'm not discounting any form of exploring it, because I don't think that there is any right answer quite yet, and until there is one, then there are no right answers. And so, I just tend to lean a little bit more towards science. Sorry. um, I personally, I mean, one piece of equipment is difficult. Um, so I might cheat a little bit and give you like two or three.
That's fine.
But, um, you know, I think, to me, I like to go to the basics. I'm not a huge blinky light person anymore. I used to be at the very beginning, because everybody had equipment and I needed equipment, right?
Yeah.
Not anymore.
Exciting.
I like a camcorder, an audio recorder, and a data logger. And um, I like being able to have a piece of equipment that I'm going to set out. There's the equipment right there, right? It's sitting there, and I've got it recorded, so I can say, hey, listen, I recorded a spike in something here. And my audio recorder picked up an EVP, or we heard footsteps. But right here, where this piece of equipment is, I actually picked up a spike in barometric, pressure,
Hmm.
or temperature, or EMF, or fill in the blank, right? Um, And so now I have a piece of evidence, quote unquote evidence, if you will, that is tangible, because now I
Yes.
have a piece of audio or a video, a clip of something that's not necessarily pointed towards this doorway over here that always sees shadows, but towards the piece of equipment that is actually picking up whatever this is. And I can say without a doubt in my mind, nobody is in that room. Nobody is
Right.
interacting with that to cause this to happen. We had an anomalous, you know, thing, right? Some anomaly occurred, and maybe it was an audio recording. Now I can look at my data, and I can say, you know what, I see a spike here. And so to me, and I had this conversation last night with somebody. It's almost like a domino effect. Once you answer one question in the paranormal, inevitably a couple more are going to start to be answered, and then one answers, another one is going to be answered, and then another one, and another one. And I feel like, if we can just hit that one little piece, and finally just hit that, hit that vein, if we were mining, I think it would be awesome. And so that's why I kind of go back towards kind of simpler technology, I guess, in a sense, and mixing it with, I want to be able to look at the data.
Yeah.
um, Blinky light stuff, I feel like, is perfectly fine. We have it for the team. We utilize it. We definitely put it out on investigations, public investigations too, because that is what people see on TV. That is what they like. Um, but that is one point in time that I can't measure. And
Yeah.
so if I can measure it, I like it a lot more.
Yeah.
So sorry I cheated, but
No, that's fine. So on the opposite end of that question, what is the piece of equipment that you no longer use anymore, just because either you don't like it or you find that it gives you false positives or it doesn't give you the data, the reliable data that you're seeking?
God, I can't remember the term that the paranormal has put around them, but the Connect cameras. Do you
Oh,
know what I'm talking about?
yes, yes.
The
Is it the SLS?
the SLS cameras.
Yes, yes.
I am not a fan of those,
Yeah,
and
we're not
and
either.
and again, I'm not here to throw anybody under the bus. I'm not going to yuck all over somebody's yum. It's just, however, knowing the the actual back end of that, and the programming and the purpose and the intent of that software, of that
Yeah.
SDK.
Hmm.
It is meant for gaming, and it is also
Hmm.
meant for mapping anything and everything that can look remotely like a human.
Right.
The whole purpose of the Kinect and that SDK released by Microsoft is to map people for a video game system.
Hmm.
And so it will map you. It will map your chair. It will map the shelving behind you. Anything that can
Yes,
remotely look like a person, it's going to
it's
map.
gonna map.
Now, that's not to say I haven't seen some cool things. I've seen people run them in big, big, big rooms, and it looks like somebody is standing in front of us.
Hmm.
Um, but on the flip side, I think that it is intent. I guess it's incorrectly purposed. I don't think that I don't think it should have been adopted, I guess, as much as it did, right? I think that the purpose and intent of it was for a game system, and then we were like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
a movie used it to make a ghost appear. God, what was that movie called?
Oh, I don't know.
that really
Heather
creepy
might know.
that
Heather might be able to type it. You don't know? I don't know.
oh man, it was kind of like that Lost and Found footage. It was like security cameras in the rooms of this family, and this girl was getting like
Oh, paranormal.
Paranormal Activity. God, how do
There you
how,
go.
how do we forget about, like? Oh yeah, the whole thing we've been talking about all
Yeah.
night. Um,
I never actually saw the movie.
it was crazy. I mean, it was so well done. I think the ending was ruined by Hollywood. There was an original ending that
Yeah.
wasn't released, but um, a one of my former roommates and I, when we were in college, went and watched that movie, and we watched it at the midnight release, because it was the creepy movie.
Yeah.
And I don't think either of us slept with the lights off that night, like when we got back. Um, so it definitely, like, it hit its intent to be creepy as hell.
Yeah. Yeah.
but I think that the use of it, I think they use like the SLS in either the first one or the second one to like map out like, oh look, there's something in the house. I think so many people started like taking off with that, and
Yeah.
um, it's cool technology. It really is, but I feel like the misunderstanding of its limitations. I just see so many people walking around with it, and they're in like crowded areas. Like even this room, my God, this would be like the
Oh, it would go
perfect
crazy.
place for
It would
ghosts
go
on the
crazy in
SLS
there.
camera.
Yeah.
So it is rough to like see people just walk around doing it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so that's probably my least favorite, just because
Yeah.
it's the way that it was implemented, and the use is it's meant to just sit.
Yeah. I tell people how it's supposed to be. You have to calibrate it. It needs to be like, what is it, 6 feet away from a wall. You're not supposed to touch it. And when I tell people that, they're like, well, what's the point? And they go, that's the point. The point is
Exactly.
you leave it stationary. And if something shows up after it's been calibrated and everything, then you can look at that data, but you can't walk around with it like you see on TV.
Yes.
That is not how it was designed to work.
And I mean that's the same thing with a lot of equipment though. It's just
Yeah.
there's either no manuals provided
Yeah.
or nobody
None.
holds them.
Yeah.
The EDI Plus is one of my favorite data loggers because to me it was one of the most financially accessible for me to
Hmm.
finally get into data logging. Um,
Hmm.
didn't really come with much of a manual, and I see
Yeah.
people on TV to this day carrying it, walking around an investigation carrying it, and that is not how that device works.
It was made to stand up for
It
a
was
reason.
made to sit, right? And so
Yeah.
you could go from a data logging scientific perspective. You can even go to the obelisk and go the exact opposite side of it with more of an ITC approach. The obelisk is people walk around with that and just carry it everywhere. It's intended to just actually sit. Same thing.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
not meant to be thrown around. It's meant to just be placed and then let it do its thing.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's just a lot of people just see what's on TV.
Yeah.
That's it. They must
Yeah.
know, right? They're on TV. They must know.
Right.
And not saying that they don't know. It's just that misrepresentation makes it difficult.
Yeah, and and that's there's all I tell people, we're not throwing anybody on TV under the bus either.
No, I have a
Like
lot of
I
really
always say, if they don't have people coming back, if they're not entertained, if they don't have the views, if they don't have the ratings, they don't have a
don't have a
show.
show. Don't have a show.
They
Exactly.
have to keep you coming back. So,
Yeah, I
but
mean,
at
you
the
look at
same time, we have to understand that it is for entertainment and entertainment
mhm.
only.
look at like the first couple of seasons of Ghost Hunters. If you look
Yeah,
all the way back, it really wasn't even a ghost show off the bat. Like it
it
was
really
it was
wasn't.
a mix of these plumbers dealing
Yeah,
with normal life and that one guy that just consistently forgot things all the time, and then his like wife fiance thing would blow up almost every episode, and then there'd be like a whole 10-minute segment of him forgetting cables and forgetting the cameras, or he just forgot the investigation. I mean, like it
yeah.
it it it, it just kind of continued into what it is today, which is entertainment. um and then after
And
that,
Jason Hawes has been very open about that too. Like he said that that's why he has his YouTube channel is because he doesn't have people telling him what to do.
yeah, I mean, you looked at that. So it started off strong. Then what did they do? They started investigating locations, and they were very honest. You know what? We didn't find anything this time.
Yeah,
And they realized people don't want to watch a whole hour of we didn't find anything.
yeah,
They want some conclusion, and so they started breaking it into 2 episodes. And I knew it. I knew it even at that age. If what I was going to watch on TV that night when it was coming out and they were advertising it, and it was like Ghost Hunters returns tonight at 2 different locations, I'd be like, oh, they're not going to find anything at other. And
yeah.
and and I was like able to like identify like, nope, they didn't get anything, and they put 2 smaller episodes together because they didn't find anything, but at least it's something really cool to look at.
Hmm.
And that started to get really bad views. So what happened? Well, now they're every time they go to a location, something is happening,
Hmm.
right? And it also started off at locations that were like people's houses and not well-known locations. And then it started like, oh well, we should go to some of these big spots that people know the names of. It's going to just keep growing. um, and so it's for entertainment. If it's not entertaining, you're not watching. Not to throw them under the bus,
Yeah,
but I mean, it's exactly what it is. I understand it.
Mhm.
Not saying they don't
So
do good work. We've
yeah.
Heather and I have had people on this show, Ghost Education 101, in the past, where we've had people from ghost hunters on here hanging out with us and chatting, and they're very open to discuss
Hmm.
and talk about it. It's just
Yeah.
TV, man.
Yeah. So expanding on that, walk us through what your, or do you do baseline process when you go to locations, and walk us through that process of what kind of baselines you record when you go.
It depends, honestly. If it's a public event, we typically, we're there for the
Yeah.
public, right? Private investigations, it often depends on, where we are, who we're working with, and really how long of a night do we have. So a lot of times we do run baseline, right? We'll look at baseline EMF for a room, especially first time locations. If for example the tavern, I know where the outlets are, right? I
Hmm.
know where my wiring, God bless, my wiring is in the walls. I know, because you investigate a location so frequently, so often, oh, that's a cold spot right there. That's because that window pane is slightly cracked.
Mm.
So we. It's okay, Philip. I'll hold your hand. um, there's some locations where we don't need to necessarily grab a baseline because we know it, and we've been there like 10 years of being at the Hanover Tavern. I know, the majority of what's going on where. That doesn't mean that when we walk into the room, we're not running, right away. Like, one of the first things I do is I pop out my EDI plus, I set it down, and I start running. You know,
Yeah.
I don't move it, because again, it's the same thing as the whole point of it is to be static. Um, but we have had some experiences where we've seen moving EMF fields where we're just seeing a spike and it's just kind of moving throughout a room.
Hmm.
Um, so we will do a baseline there. We will run a Geiger counter,
Hmm.
especially in new locations, places that are, under lock and key mostly. Until you investigate, we always kind of run a Geiger counter, and that's a lot of times just because of like radon buildup,
Yeah.
especially in a lot of locked up homes and houses that are older, buildings that are older. The concrete is porous,
Yep.
and it's going to just suck in all that gas that's breaking down, and that can be, first off, it can be deadly,
Hmm.
but secondly, it can also alter your perceptions, and so it will allow you to hallucinate, right?
Yeah.
And that is audibly and visually.
Yeah.
So we will do a baseline for that. What is the radiation looking like in here? Also, like just an actual looking around with your eyes. There are a number of places abandoned. Not like when I say abandoned hospital, it's not like an actual abandoned place. It is like a location that we have access to, we've got permission to investigate, or whatever. But that in some of their lower levels do have asbestos or do have black mold or mold in
Uh-huh.
general.
Yeah.
And so we typically, if we see that on site, um, if it's just like, man, we really want to check this room out, we're grabbing masks. We carry around
Yeah.
masks,
I carry
especially.
a mask in my pack everywhere we
Yeah,
go, just in
uh,
case, because you just never know.
exactly. And so we'll do that, or we just honestly we just avoid that
Yeah.
either that hallway or that wing, fill in the blank, whatever it is, because I mean, I've heard of some really cool places that people have gone into, maybe with or without permission, but I've seen some really cool things. But I also know that those walls are lined and packed with asbestos, and I have heard the horror stories, and I am good. I'm okay keeping glass outside of my lungs.
Yeah.
Um, Pretty okay with it. So we'll do that. Temperature, just kind of your basic stuff, and then I typically am not visually looking for a change. That is what the data loggers are there for. And so obviously I will use the Geiger counter to first make sure that it's safe to be in there. And I'll set down my EDI plus and everything, but I'm not going to be like staring at it and being like, oh, it just spiked right there, because I feel like that starts to skew your data.
Hmm.
and your personal interpretation of that evening. So a
Sure.
lot of times what I like to do is I'll go back and say, okay, let me pull up my data now. Let me listen to the audio or the video clip that's aligning with that.
Hmm.
And that gives me a little bit better of, I'm not just like, this is baseline and I'm just, freaking out because, you know, just because I'm looking, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, so we do a lot of the same baseline that I think most folks hopefully do is, looking at environmental data, and then just visually making sure it's safe to be wherever we're at. I've been in places that that's the construction room and there's nails and boards everywhere. And I'm sorry, but I'm good. Don't need
Yeah.
I don't need any of those shots for when you step on a rusty nail. I'm good.
Right.
Had that happen, I'm good.
Oh, yeah.
Um, so we'll do a lot of that, and then we just kind of dive into the investigation,
Hmm.
and see what the night entails.
Cool. What is, or let's talk about you as a historical researcher, because I know you do a lot of that. And it was interesting because I was telling Heather earlier today, we were talking before the show, and I told her, it might sound kind of sad, but like my 13-year-old daughter, I think she's only been to the library just a few times. It's like in today's world, even when she's writing reports, like she's not required to go to the library, at least at her school. Like she's not
Yeah.
required to go and do it. So, like, if somebody is wanting to get into just not paranormal investigation, but they just want to like research historical locations, what would you tell them? Where should they start? And how should they go about it?
So I mean, and I know Heather and I were talking about this earlier. The use of Google. I think Google's a great source to just
Mhm.
get started on your research.
Mhm.
There's a location that I've been researching recently that was my first stab, because I'm like, I don't know where to start. I don't know where to begin.
Right.
And so I took a name of the location and just started searching, and then from there I was able to identify, oh well, this person says they live there, or their grandmother lived there. This person knew somebody that ran a shop that was right next door that they own, and so I'm able to I guess kind of cast a wide net,
Hmm.
and just see what I catch, right? Just
Yeah.
just just visually inspect and say, okay, well, you know what, that's actually trash. Let's just throw that out here. But this stuff is actually pretty good. We'll put this over here. And then from there, I start diving into those very specific things. And so maybe I'll say, well, I need to know who historically owned this, or who owns it. What is the property, line, all that sort of stuff. So like, locally here, there's a GIS tracker,
Mm.
that allows me to see, okay, who owns this property? What's there's like a numerical value assigned to it. And then I can go through some of the records that the county has, and I can say, okay, well, here's that number, here's who owned it, here's where, so on and so forth. Now I don't get a whole picture because I just get names of people that owned it. That doesn't tell me about the caliber of individual that they were.
Right.
And so that's where, going into, again, Google, and searching for, are there anybody who has already done this research, or ancestors who have something to share. I've seen some really cool, like family books, where somebody
Oh.
has done like a lineage, I've got one for my own family. Actually, I've got Seawright. It's a very weird last name, but there is a Seawright family that somewhere down the line on my dad's side over here kind of married in, and somebody did all of the digging and published a book about it. And so
Wow.
it was really cool, because I was doing like this dig on my own personal, my ancestry and everything, and I'm like, holy shit, somebody did like 100% of the work over here. Thanks,
Yeah.
and so it was so cool for me to just find this little gem tucked away, and it was just through a Google search.
That's
Um,
pretty cool.
but I will say, the one place that most people forget, or sometimes don't even notice because maybe it's a little small, but they're typically in almost every town and city, historical societies.
Hmm.
And historical societies are a fantastic way to get information, because most of the time they are not just made up of people that know the history of the location, but also were part of that history,
Hmm.
and lived there and worked there and had family there and knew the people of the place that you're investigating. So you get not just this clinical understanding of the location and the history, but you get to understand who those people were, which I think
Yeah,
is just as important, right? You can learn the
right.
history of a building, but that doesn't tell you about the person that lived in it.
Right.
So there's a number of different ways you can approach it. I think obviously local libraries to that town is very important. Not everybody has everything, but they might be able to point you in the right direction. And I also think that historical societies are great. I have reached out to a number of them. I actually, on the Ghost Finders, I investigated a place called Greenville Manor, and
Oh, I've
unfortunately,
heard of
it's
that one.
yeah, unfortunately, it's no longer a location that you can investigate today. But
Mm.
it was a funeral home, and
Oh, wow.
there was this chunk of missing history that they had, and they had been kind of trying to work to understand what happened during this time period in this house. And so I found out that there was a historical society, and I asked them, I'm like, well, did you guys reach out to these folks? And they're like, yeah, well, we never heard back. So we just we just figured they didn't want anything to do with us. uh, and I was like, well, you know what, as part of the historian for this TV show, like I'm interested. Like,
Hmm.
why not take my shot, right? So I reached out, and it just turns out that they missed the email. That
Mm.
was it. They just missed the email.
Yeah.
And they had been hoping that whomever lived there or worked there and ran that location would reach out to them. And they actually had they invited me over to the historical society. They had a small museum, and in that museum was a selection of items that were of that funeral home from the time period they were trying to figure out information about.
Wow.
So it was really cool. And then I got to introduce them, and then they started, to get to learn from each other.
Yeah.
So it was really exciting for me, and I don't think that necessarily even made it to the episode, but as somebody that was just enthralled with the history, it was really exciting to be able to pull these two different people together and be like, hey, both of you are here for the same reason, as
Yeah.
well. Um, so it was really neat. I think that historical societies are often overlooked when they shouldn't be.
Do you have any suggestions? For example, I live in the South, I live in Georgia,
Mhm.
and I reached out to a couple historical societies. A lot of them, they, especially once they find out that you're into paranormal, they will literally tell you they want nothing to do with the paranormal. So, do you come across that from time to time where they don't want to either talk about certain things you're asking about because they know where it's going to lead, or they just know what you do and they just don't want anything to do with it?
Every so often,
Hmm.
I mean, I have had people that are like, I don't believe in ghosts, and I'm like, that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm not here to impress upon you that they are real or not. I am here because I want to be a witness to the history. And
Mm.
so I have always approached it from the aspect of, I am curious and I want to learn. Can you teach me something?
Hmm.
And most of the times I haven't had any trouble with anybody that, because most of these folks are just, they have a story that they're happy to share and tell, and they're just happy for somebody to listen.
Hmm.
So I haven't had too much. I mean, I'm in Virginia, and so there still is a little bit of that kind of Bible Belt mentality. Again, I'm not saying anything condescending to that, but there is a little bit of that idea that, well, there's no such thing as ghosts. Sorry.
Yeah.
And I've worked with some people that funnily enough, are, well, if my family found out I was doing this,
Yeah.
and I'm like, okay, well, we just won't have you any pictures or any video,
Yeah.
anything like that.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
perfectly fine. Um, but I've always approached it from a great respect for the history, and I'm here to be a steward. I am here to learn and hopefully share, so that that history isn't lost. And a lot of people tend to be very receptive to that.
Yeah. And I think
Now, if
that's so important,
if
what you
somebody is
just
like,
said. Yeah.
ghosts aren't real, sorry. And unfortunately, they're missing the picture. They're missing it. And I mean, to be fair, in some context, They're absolutely right. I think that there are some people that are out there that are going to say, okay, well, tell me the name. All right, I'm going to use it now on, for
Yeah.
some malicious intent, or, I'm going to use it to make money. But I'm very upfront with, who I am, what I'm representing. And just like, I call it my spiel, who is Steve Dills, and what is Transcend Paranormal. And I always tell people we are a group of people that are, working to support historic locations. We don't take any money. This is our purpose. This is our mission.
Hmm.
Um, and usually people are like, okay, cool. Let's talk.
Yeah.
Um, I think, if you go in there and you're like, hi, I'm a ghost hunter. I'm ghost hunting about this place. Can you tell me something? Like, people are gonna be like, whoa, what the hell?
Yeah.
But if you meet them where they are, most of the time, folks will be willing to talk. And if they're not,
Yeah.
that's okay. That's all right. No skin off your back.
Yeah. I think establishing relationships too is really important when
Mhm.
they learn that they can trust you, who you really are, and what you actually do, like you said. I
Yeah,
think that's really important. So it's
yeah,
like you said, it's not about going in and telling people, you're a ghost hunter or a paranormal investigator. You need to actually establish a relationship with them and
yeah.
build
And what is,
trust.
be clear with your intent. What are you
Yeah.
gonna do? I'm gonna be, I'm trying to research some information about, um, I'll use the Dunlora Inn in here in Virginia. The Dunlora Inn, we've, I'm very fascinated about the history, and I know the original builders, but there's a gap of time that I don't know anything about. Can you share some of that history with me?
Hmm.
Um, and so I'm not saying like tell me about ghosts,
Right.
but history in and of itself derives the ghost, right? The whole idea, at least in my mind, is that history adds context to a haunting. You can't have one without the other. And so you're directly learning about information that you can take and utilize on your investigation, utilize in your research, in your own field notes, if you will, and grow with, and get to
Hmm.
expand. So
Hmm.
I think it's all about the approach. If you've kind of like got that Mountain Dew mixed with Red Bull glint in your eye, and you're slightly feral walking in there, people are gonna be like, what the hell? But I think if you approach it correctly, I think you'll have pretty decent success.
Good. Awesome. So as a historian for the Ghost Finders, how do you decide which details to highlight to make an episode both educational and engaging?
um so you know a lot, it's funny. The Ghost Finders has always had a difficult uh go of things, almost in a way. When we get to a location, for example, we investigated Henricus Historical Park for one episode, and I brought everybody down and we investigated, and it was an awesome time. And we went to investigate what is referred to as um, Rock Hall. And Rock Hall was the home of one of the ministers that lived at Henricus, and actually was the house is the exact blueprints. They found the exact blueprints of the original Rock Hall, and it's the same building, the same house that Pocahontas stayed in right before she went to England.
Mm.
And so we're in this building. It's like 2 or 3 in the morning. My God, everybody's exhausted. And um, earlier in the day, I shared some history about that building and about Pocahontas and about the whole idea was we were going to focus this episode on the early native settlers and settlement and their tie to Henricus and this English community. But Henricus has a history that far extends, right? There's hundreds of thousands of years of Native Americans on this property, this landmass, because it was such a perfect spot to hunt, to grow, to fish. I mean, everything is perfect. Um, it also has a swath of history even after that, right? It was one of the main thoroughfares between Richmond City and the sea. And so
Mhm.
Henricus was a very important spot during the American Revolution. and also the Civil War. And so there's been all of this military activity, people coming and going all through here. And so we decide we're going to focus on, early Americana, right? 1622, kind of in that era.
Mm-hmm.
We get in there 2 a.m. to investigate Rock Hall, and we have something coming over one of the spirit boxes that is just solely tied to um, Civil War.
Oh,
And so it's like, oh well, we're in like the wrong century here, like, and so we had that conversation, like, well, this doesn't fit the narrative that we were trying to share in this episode. But I'm like, but how do you tie a narrative around something that is so difficult to define?
yeah.
Because we don't know what we're going to be picking up. And so my hope, and the whole reason that I try to share what I share is really to impassion people, and
Yeah.
to get them to explore for themselves, and fall in love with history, through the pretense of the paranormal, if you will. I that's how I found my way to history, was by being so enthralled with what was going on around me. And I think that is what's pushed me to be so active in historical preservation and restoration communities. And with so many historical locations in Virginia and even outside of Virginia. Um, so you know it's a lot of work, but it's very rewarding. You know,
That's awesome.
so
Anton has a question. He says, Steve, let me see if I can show. There we go. Steve, no, go back. The EDI Plus is great, but have you found anything more comprehensive on elements being monitored?
Um, I have not anything that I could name like right off the top of my head. First off, it's been a very long day. But secondly, there are a ton of other pieces of equipment. The EDI Plus to me is kind of like an entry level into data logging. It's like saying, if you're familiar with coding, it's like saying hello world, print
Mhm.
F hello world. And so, to me, it's like this really nice way to measure something. Now, I have friends, especially in CPRI, and Heather. I know that you've had some of those folks on. Tiffany, I think you've interviewed some of those folks from CPRI, and they are a nonprofit, just recently, and they have financial backing to invest in some higher tech. And so, spectrometers, the whole 9 yards, to actually say, what, we are detecting a spike in ionizing radiation. It's this particle. So I just don't presume that it's radon, right? Because that's
Right.
just my thought, right? Because I know Virginian soil, but I don't know that for sure.
Mhm.
So yes, there are 100% better pieces of equipment than EDI Plus. In fact, I know you can't even purchase the EDI Plus. I don't think you can anymore. I think
I don't think you can. Yeah, I think it
um,
was taken off, or they're not making them anymore.
but there are better pieces of equipment. It's just first off, there is a little bit of a learning curve. The EDI Plus is great because
Hmm.
it's a box. I can set it down. I can press start. I can press record, and then I'm off to the races. Other tech, you have to set up. You have to build like this. I keep flipping this around. This is a Flipper Zero that I have, and it's got just a very basic OS on it. But I can add and attach a number of inputs and a number of devices that will measure anything and everything that I want to measure. But I need to understand what I'm measuring. I need to have the equipment to do it,
Right.
and I need to know how can I set this up.
Hmm.
So yes, there is a lot better. I couldn't name anything off the top of my head, um, but it all depends on your, I guess, ability to start picking up a lot of that new knowledge. Because once you start doing something like that, you're going to be like, wow, there are a lot of terms that I don't understand, because that's exactly what happened to me.
Hmm.
But you'll have to have a little bit of a learning curve, and a capacity for learning, as well as being able to afford the price point, because that
Right.
can be expensive.
Yes. I always tell people the best piece of equipment is just yourself.
Hmm. Yeah. I
You
mean,
don't have to have the fancy things. Go in with a voice recorder. You can get those for like $20 nowadays.
yeah,
You can even get a night vision handheld camera on Amazon for a very decent price nowadays. And
yeah,
honestly, that's all you need.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's I commented on it earlier. When I first got into the paranormal, one of the very first things I realized was like, holy shit, I don't have any equipment.
Yeah.
And I would watch people put out seas, just oceans of blinky light things.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I need all of that stuff
Yeah.
so that I can investigate, right? And here I am, not wanting to carry any of that stuff around. Finally, knowing that the majority of it is not helpful on an investigation.
Yeah.
I mean, I am not to burst any bubbles here, but I am not a huge fan of um, ghost balls, also known as cat balls, um, because they
Anything makes them go off.
are a toy. Yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
anything makes them go off, and if something has not touched it for a while, guess what? It goes off. So it's just I've seen people now. To be fair, I have seen them levitate. I've seen one literally lift off. We had it sitting on top of. I don't have one in front of me, but I had it on like a candle holder, like
Hmm.
for like a singular tapered candle, and it was sitting on it at Henricus, and it actually lifted off and fell onto the floor.
Wow.
But that's not to say that couldn't have happened with like a marble or anything else that was also sitting there.
Right.
It's just because we had that piece of equipment. Um, Now that's not like a function of the equipment, so I'm not gonna grant that a +1 to the cat ball. Um, I think the whole purpose of it is like, you know, all of our ancestors are just really enthralled with the blinky red and blue lights, so they're just gonna smack it when they want to answer a question. It's just like it's so just I don't know. I can't get behind it. If I was a dead person at my age, I don't think I'd want to play with a cat ball and be like, that's how we're gonna talk.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think, I prefer the scientific method too. And so if I'm going to use a piece of equipment, I want to at least somehow record what's happening,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be through the EDI, a MEL, hopefully you're capturing, if you're lucky enough, something is moving on video for you. I want something like that. I want something that I can take and say, this actually was recorded and it
Yeah.
happened. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. Exactly. I mean, because it's tangible. Then I can carry it to somebody else and say, look at
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
You know, um, it's so hard to do that with just one piece of evidence.
Mhm.
Corroborating evidence is great.
Yes. Yes. That's why we never, when we investigate, we're always with somebody.
Hmm.
We never investigate a room on our own because, perfect example, and I know I use this example a lot, but it's just the perfect one. Um, Last year, about a year ago, our team was investigating in Atlanta, and we were in a historical building, and heard a disembodied voice. And luckily, I had a team member with me. He was right behind me and he heard it too. And the crazy thing is it didn't record on either one of our body cams, but
Hmm.
we heard it clear as day. And so, had it just been me or just been him, it's like, yeah, sure, it was
Personal
just the
experience.
wind or something.
There.
But
Yeah.
no, both of us heard a woman's voice speak clear as day, very loud right behind us, yet it didn't record on our body cams. So
Well,
it's
and,
really important to
and
have somebody with you.
even if you don't have that recording, you at least know that what you experienced didn't happen in here. It
Exactly.
happened
Yeah.
out here.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes hard to prove, right? Especially if
Yeah.
you didn't record it. You're like, oh my god, am I just going
Yeah.
crazy?
Well,
Um,
because now it's like if somebody's like, yeah, sure, I don't care what you think. I had a team member with me and he heard the exact same
mhm.
thing,
Yep.
so yeah,
And the other thing is just safety too, safety in numbers. I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
I've investigated locations where we legitimately thought somebody was squatting.
Hmm. Yeah.
And we had a DVR set up, we had camera set up, and we actually heard what sounded like somebody walking around on one of these floors. We looked at the
Mm.
camera, couldn't see anybody, but it's clear as day. Sounded like somebody was like right behind the camera, like setting up, whatever, fill in the blank. It was just very loud. And so we went up there fully expecting. We had a security officer with us because we were fully
Wow.
expecting that somebody was there. And we got up there, nobody, absolutely nobody. But what happens if there is somebody there and it's just you?
Hmm.
Like, that is very unsafe. And it doesn't necessarily even have to be the living that are the scary ones in these situations. You're also walking into some of these locations that have been closed up for a very long time, and you
Yeah.
could get hurt.
Yeah.
We had a public investigation one year where it was out at a battlefield, now overgrown and it's kind of in the woods, but in its battlefield prime, it was just a field, right? That's
Hmm.
where a lot of these revolutionary and Civil War battles occurred. And so we were investigating it, and the location that we were at had paved certain portions of the path to make it easier and accessible for everybody. Um, and we warned everybody, hey, listen, you have to be careful because there is a step down if you walk off the path. Please make sure you've got your flashlights on and so forth. And unfortunately, one woman fell and she tripped and she ended up hitting her head on it and had to go to the hospital and get stitches. Um, but if that was just her by herself, that could have been very deadly, right? That could have been very unsafe.
Yeah.
But we had, and this is how we set up our events, is we had two people. We have one person that is, there leading the group. The second person is,
Hmm.
kind of corralling the cats, if you will, but also just making sure that everything is going smoothly. And if there's an emergency, that
Yep.
person helps step up along with. I call them floaters, and my team hates it because it just sounds like toilet humor. But we have people on the team that literally will just move from one group to the next and
Hmm.
just make sure that there's nothing of a situation that needs to be handled if
Yeah.
there's any emergency, anything like that. And that was one of the situations. And so I think it's very you try to get that alpha, that alpha wolf energy of going into a location by yourself because you look badass, but it totally could be unsafe,
Yeah.
and it is
It's
not
not worth
worth
it.
it. It is not
Yeah.
worth it. You know, don't become one of the ghosts, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, exactly. Heather, I don't know if you have a specific question that you want to type, and we'll do it that
No,
way.
I'm good for now. You've been doing a great
You good?
job.
Okay, just want to make sure. Okay, let's see. What other questions can I find here? Um, oh, what behind the scenes steps do viewers never see that's actually crucial to getting reliable results?
Hmm. I don't know. I mean, are we approaching this from like a television aspect, like behind the
Yeah,
scenes? Okay.
yeah.
I feel like it depends. I mean, for the ghost finders, we will go in with the idea of like, this is how we want to film. We want to share these stories. And so behind the scenes, there's little old me trying to dig through history and be like, well, what's some really interesting things, and what can we share about this location to like share with people. So it is very, I guess, tailored to how do we want to portray this location. Uh,
Hmm.
and I always try to do a hopefully a good job of saying, hey, listen, this is these locations have their own soul. Like they've been many things throughout their lives. Um, so there's a lot of that, and that is obviously not glorious, right? Because it is a lot of literally this sitting here late night, dim lights, digging, and that is not glorious, but it's important.
Yep.
Um, on set, again, I think it depends on the show. My buddy Chris and I co-host a what we like to call the potato quality paranormal show called Eerie Encounters, and we very much run and gun it. There
Hmm.
is no behind the scenes because you are literally behind the scenes with us. I mean, the camera is just everywhere, and sometimes I'll hold it, sometimes I'll hold it, whatever. But we try to I guess break the fourth wall in the sense that it's not like a setting. It is what we get is what you get.
Hmm.
We share the history up front. We're like, this is where we're going. This is some of the history behind it. Let's see what we get. Um, and then we talk about it, right? The Ghost Finders is a little bit more of a, let's try to build out what is the story that we want to share. Let's look at the stories of this building, and let's pick a couple that we can really hone in on, and really focus on. So there's a little bit of, I guess, a different behind the scenes prep work for that. One is very much so, there is no behind the scenes. What you see is what we see. If we walk into a room, you're walking in there with us. And then the Ghost Finders is like, well, let's, how do we tell this story? Now let's go to this location, and we spend a little bit of time before we start filming in the evening, exploring uh, ourselves, right? And so that might be doing some investigating. Um,
Right.
Not anything like, necessarily heavy, because we're also like trying to get ready for the setup and everything. But just something where we can say, hey, we should come back here. We should focus on this room or this part of the building. As part of, we progress through the evening, through the episode. One of the other things that I really like to do on site is, because again, I'm like, I love the history. I like to interview people.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite opportunities I've ever had, and this isn't really part of anything. This was just Steve going off being weird, but we were at Penhurst, and
Mhm.
it just so happened that when I walked in to make, to just go and chat with whomever was going to be our host for the evening, there was this older woman there, and she had just finished giving a tour. And I guess this is a little bit less of behind the scenes of a TV show and more of an investigation, because this is just an investigation, but I still think it applies. So apologies.
Mhm.
But we're off-roading here. And so I started talking with her, and lo and behold, she was, or had been, a nurse for a huge portion of her life at Penhurst.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I walked into Penhurst having this one already. I mean, when I say Penhurst, both of you and everybody watching already has an image of Penhurst in their mind. They have, oh my gosh, like, what happened at Penhurst? There's already this like preconceived notion of belief about what Penhurst was and is.
Mhm.
And what it was for me was this place that was just horrible to these people, and a location that just, people were forgotten.
Yeah.
And so I walked into Penhurst with that pretense, like, this is so sad, right? That these people were just the outcasts of the world, placed somewhere to no longer exist. And after the conversation with her, it was just so interesting to see a location so quickly change for me, because the stories that she shared with me weren't horror stories. They were stories of love and compassion and caring and nurturing. And she told me about some of the different patients that were there and her relationship with them, and how her and some of the other nurses and doctors would come in on weekends because they didn't have enough money to staff on the weekends, but they would do it
Wow.
out of the kindness of their heart. And so, like, things like that were just, it's
Yeah.
such a different story than what is so predominantly told. Why? Because horror sells.
Yeah.
Um, but to me, it was probably one of the most interesting interviews that I've ever. I mean, and it was just me chatting with this woman, but it changed my view of that location and other locations too, just because I didn't see it as a place of. I mean, yeah, these atrocities did occur here, right? But there is also a story of compassion to be told, and it wasn't like everybody just said screw these people.
Yeah.
There were people there working so hard to
Yeah.
show these folks that had been abandoned that somebody still cared. Um,
Yeah.
and so that's a huge part of going in, at least me, behind the scenes. I'm trying to learn everything I can before going and filming and investigating. Now, there are some psychics on the show, Patty and Rob, that don't like to know as much about it,
Mhm.
because they want to go in and say, well, what I picked up, does this, does the history validate what I'm experiencing, what I'm seeing, what
Right.
I'm feeling, so on and so forth. And so, I make notes so that I can say, okay, well, and I've had that. I've had Rob and Patty both pick up on things that actually fit historically. Like I can say, you know what, actually that lines up to this right here. And that, that's really cool. And if you don't do that work behind the scenes, then you don't
you would never know.
reap the benefits of it. And of course, then there's the less glorious of setting up cameras and setting up the lighting so that people can see, and just the sound and mics and all that sort of stuff. But that's Hollywood magic. But I think to me, a lot of my behind the scenes work tends to be just getting familiar with a location and then getting to learn its history and the people of its history before I go into anything.
Anton has another question. He says, Steve, do you have issues with EMF with all the locations, equipment, cameras, etc.?
There was a time when I did. And it wasn't really like all the time. There are locations where you will get, feedback. For example, you can get, like white noise feedback on some of your audio recorders. I have a Sony camera that I run that has night vision on it, and I run a Rode microphone on it. And there's two models of this one where it's battery operated. There's an onboard battery, and then you hook it up to your camera. There's another where it just pulls the battery from the camera itself. And I bought that one first because it was cheaper. What I very quickly found when I was investigating the very first time taking it out on into a location at the tavern was our Wi-Fi was kicking off just the right signal that the Rode microphone would pick it up, and I would just hear this horrible static. And so I realized very quickly what that was. I started researching, and I was like, oh man. And so I ended up selling that one. I got the one with the onboard battery, and for whatever reason, I guess it's just because of the grounding, but it works without any issue, and I don't have to worry about that. I do have other locations. For example, actually, I've got two examples. One is at the tavern, and there is up on our very top floor, there is something called the Shining Hallway, which is what I refer to it as. And it is just a long hallway that at night is only illuminated by two red exit signs. And it totally looks like something out of the Shining. Like you'd look down and see the twins standing there. And so that's why I call it that, right? But halfway down that hallway is a wiring, like electrical box. And that thing kicks off EMF like nobody's business. And so you can stand there or within proximity in that spot of the hallway and feel like you're being watched. Everything's going to kick off. Everything, you're having your EMF spiking and everything. And that is just because EMF, electromagnetic field, can in large amounts or over an extended period of time can create hallucinations, and you can feel it. Some people can feel it. So I have had issues with high EMF and issues with EMF causing issues to other pieces of equipment. But a lot of times it's just, okay, well, let's identify what that is. Let's single it out and then either operate around it or operate knowing that we can't use that piece of equipment for this investigation.
Exactly.
Because of that EMF. It's also been a solution to a haunting too. I've had a number of cases where, and I'll share one in particular. We went into a location and this woman was having just lots of experiences. And Heather, I think we even talked about this on the show, like way back. She was having, her and her family were having paranormal experiences on the first floor and in the basement. And so we get there, we're investigating, and we notice that there's a few things. First off, all of the activities occurring on the first floor, not the second floor, the first floor and the basement. We get onto the basement and it's pretty shallow, right? You feel claustrophobic. And so everybody already, humans, we don't like those little tiny enclosed spaces. So you already feel claustrophobic, right? Your head is also up very close to the wiring.
Mm-hmm.
And this was an older home, and all of the wiring was unshielded.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were seeing spikes in EMF all throughout the basement, all throughout the first floor, nothing on the second floor. We said, hey, listen, we think we know what's going on. We think that, well, we know that your wiring is ungrounded. This is unsafe. You should get this fixed. Like, rerun the wiring, then let's see if we have any experiences.
Yeah.
Wiring was all replaced. Guess what? No more ghosts.
Yep.
And so, it's kind of the same, I guess, two sides of the spectrum there. You've got, EMF causing issues, and then EMF just actually being the issue itself. And I think that's where, going into investigation using your brain comes very, very important in this context, because without that, you'd be like, oh my God, this is the most active place ever.
Yeah.
And that'd be it, right? You'd be like,
and we see that so much.
yeah, and you're doing a disservice to yourself and a disservice to your client, because now they're living with these electric neon glowing ghosts, when in reality it's just
high end. Yeah, we actually had a location we investigated where there was an exit sign, and for whatever reason it was just emitting so much EMF.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily, I don't remember who it was, but somebody was like, go test go investigate like just the sign, because right when you came down the stairs and you went through the threshold, you got that kind of like, oh, it's heavy, somebody's watching me, just like that odd feeling of just, something's not right. But it was only in that one spot. It wasn't anywhere else. And so somebody was like, yeah, let's take a look at it. And it was just an exit sign. It was the weirdest thing. We couldn't find a electric box or anything. It was just this.
That's like the same thing with like box fans. I've had a couple cases where folks have box fans that are sitting like right next to their bed. And you want, like, people used to build these EMF pumps where they're like, we're just gonna create as much EMF, and we're just gonna be like the Energizer Bunny. We're just gonna charge up all the ghosts. You want one on the cheap? Just go to Walmart and buy a box fan.
Yeah,
because they are ungrounded. And same thing, I've had people have all these experiences at night. They feel like being watched. They feel like they're seeing things, so on and so forth. We had them move the box fan from literally where it was right next to their head down to the other side, like down in the corner past their bed. No more ghosts.
Yeah.
And yeah, you got to be careful, right? You can't just go in and say, oh, that's definitely a ghost.
Yeah.
Nope. Box fan.
Or sometimes it's an alarm clock.
Yeah, I mean, and it could be anything. I mean, we had another case where it was a fridge, an old fridge that was just in this den, and the gentleman had this, like this lazy boy, like the rocking chair, the rocking chair that as I sit here rocking, but like, everybody's got that one chair that they really like, and so that was his chair, and it was, he had it, right there next to the TV. The fridge was right back over here. And where his head was the perfect height, because that's where this just like really just line of EMF, I guess, where the motor was in the back of the fridge or something, was just kicking it. And so he had all these experiences while literally sitting in this chair, because he'd sleep there too occasionally. And when he'd sleep there, guess what? Just right at head level. And same thing. It's just like, we asked him to just move the fridge, and so the activity dipped down.
We got about 20 more minutes, so you have time for a couple more questions here. Let's see. You've actually answered a lot of the questions that I already had while you were talking.
Whoops.
No, it's totally fine. That's awesome. I love when that happens. Let's see. Give me a second here.
You are fine.
In your opinion, what's the most misunderstood aspect of paranormal research today?
I don't know if it's the most, but I feel like there is a fine line between dark tourism and research.
Mm.
And I think we talked about that a little bit earlier, but
Oh, I think we touched on it. Yeah.
you know, I think that if you're investigating something, you have to put a due diligence in to bring a healthy level of skepticism,
Hmm.
and ability and willingness to change your opinion on something. Because if you're not willing to grow with whatever information you gather from it, then why are you doing this, right? So, um, I think that a lot of people uh, confuse research with just going to a location and having a good time. And there's nothing wrong with that. I do that all the time. In fact,
Yeah.
I'm considering doing that. Some of my teammates are heading to the old they're going to the old hospital on College Hill, and we have been there. It's an awesome location, and they're heading there in a couple weeks. And they're like, "Come on, Steve," and I'm like, "I want to go," right? But I'm not necessarily there to do like this grand research. I think that I will expand on what I've explored last time, right? But um, in terms of saying you're doing a paranormal investigation, it does entail more than just being present in the location and experiencing things. That also means doing your research ahead of time, reviewing your
Right.
data afterwards, and coming up with some sort of conclusion, whether that is answering the question, is this place active or not? I don't say is it haunted or not, because I think that that's such a hard to define concept or definition, right? But you know, you have to put in work ahead of time and after. It's not just the thrill. That's like just going on a roller coaster, right? That's great. But what do you do with it now? Where do you take your experiences? Are you going to utilize them and say, hey, you know what? Let's try to figure this out. Because that's the whole intent of the idea of an investigation, is to
Exactly.
figure out the root cause of something. Um, and I think that we sometimes may or may not just utilize that as a way to have fun with people. And again, perfectly okay, nothing wrong with that. But I think that there is a little bit of a difference between a team and individual people going time and
Yeah.
time again versus just going once for the thrill and for the fun
Yeah.
of the hunt.
Right.
Enjoy both. I
Yeah.
love both, but they're different. They're different things.
Yeah. And you're able to enjoy both because you've built a relationship with your teammates too. You guys can go into a place and just go to have fun and not necessarily do a full on investigation like you would.
Mhm.
It can be fun, but you have to have, like you said earlier in the show, you have to have people around you who you trust.
Yeah, yeah, oh
It's
yeah.
really, really important. And I think me and Heather have talked about this too in past episodes. We've discussed it a lot. Like, don't go into a location alone. Don't go into a
Mm-mm.
location with people you don't know or you don't trust.
Yep.
Even if you are with people who you know and trust, make sure somebody at home knows where you are because cell phones fail, things
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
If you're going off in the woods to, hunt for Bigfoot or look for UFOs, make sure you send your pin location to a family member. It's just
Yeah.
logic, so
And we get so excited sometimes that we've missed
yeah.
that part.
Yeah, yeah. It's like how many people go missing every year in the woods?
Right,
Don't be
right.
that person.
Especially like I am not like I enjoy going glamping, right?
Mhm.
My wife's parents and most of their family have campers. So I too like to say I enjoy camping, right? But I'm well aware that does not equate to walking out onto the Appalachian Trail,
Right.
and pitching a tent somewhere in the woods. No, no, no. That is backing my RV and my
Yeah.
camper up into a spot that has running water and electricity. That doesn't. These things are not the same.
Yeah.
So when you go into a location, be prepared. Understand what you're walking into. I mean, you look at that people that like spelunk, right? These folks that go into caves,
Yeah.
and you've heard horror stories, right? People that went just an inch too far, or they
Yeah.
weren't prepared. They didn't prepare enough. And there are people that go in and out of caves all day, every day, and they're fine. They also prepare. They make sure that they're ready. They have all the tools that they need, extra batteries, another person, right? One of the scary, my God, the scariest story, and I'm sure you guys have heard of it, is that one cave diver that went in and he got stuck head down,
Yeah.
and it was like some time until people found him and everything. But he still did almost everything right too.
Yeah.
He had other
Yeah.
people with him. He had all the extra, accoutrements and everything. And think about it. What if he was by himself? It would have probably been even of a longer, more agonizing situation. I mean, ultimately he didn't make it out alive, but that is just an example of what can go wrong even in the best of situations.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you have to be prepared for that.
Absolutely. Has there ever been an investigation that taught you more about human behavior than about ghosts?
I mean, in a weird way, I almost feel like the majority of investigations do that in a sense.
Hmm.
Some people, I guess there's different reasons for everybody to investigate, right? I think most of us are trying to answer the question of is this it? Is there something else? Um, and I think that is an interestingly internal pursuit. That when you question that, it does kind of define who you are a little bit, right? Because in a sense, that does mean you're worried about your legacy, right? What are the things that you're leaving behind? And so I think that is very human, right? And so I think that every time we walk into some of these locations, it helps define that. So I think that's an interesting human thing that we learn going into these investigations. I think you learn your limit in certain things a little bit better,
Absolutely.
right? Um, am I necessarily afraid to walk into the dark? No, not really. I just want to make sure that if I'm going to do that, then there's somebody else behind me, right?
Hmm.
And so, I think that has taught me a lot about myself too, right? It's not that I'm there to be a leader. I'm just willing to take the first step, so long as you feel comfortable to walk behind me.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that in and of itself, I think that teaches people about themselves. I think you learn a lot about yourself, because when you walk into a location, a haunted location, a lot of times we're quiet, right? And so that tends to drive a lot of internal thinking. Um, and if you've got a massively ADHD brain like me, you're probably having multiple conversations at the same time with yourself, all up between your ears, and it's a nightmare. But it's really, really interesting because haunted locations or historic, active locations tend to demand a little bit of silence and stillness. And it's really neat to get to explore that side of you when you get to finally slow down and purposefully pay attention to the world around you. And you're right. I mean, I've learned things about my teammates who are friends and family members, really. If not by blood, then by experience. Um, but I've learned a lot about them and who they are and what makes them tick, and what are their greatest triumphs and their downfalls, and all of that through investigating.
Yeah.
So I do think that investigating can be a very personal thing, right? I mean, people go to gallery readings to connect with loved ones, not just random ghosts at locations. So I think that sometimes the pursuit of paranormal supersedes the location for the individual, and we bring a lot of that with us, and sometimes wear it on our sleeve, even if we don't intend to.
Hmm.
So I do think investigating, the act of investigating, can tell you a lot about the person that is also pursuing, not just what is being pursued.
Great. And one final question, Heather. This is the last question I have for him for tonight. If you can investigate any historical
She's
site without
speechless.
limits anywhere,
She's speechless.
oh, she's speechless.
Sorry, Heather, I had to.
That's okay.
All right, sorry.
No, you're okay. If you could investigate any historical site without limits, anywhere, anytime, which one would it be and why?
So I'm gonna go way out left field, kind of like things that would be like really cool. Poveglia Island, and that's in Italy, and it is an island, right? So it doesn't have uh, the I guess the reality that is humanity, right? It doesn't have all the traffic that still passes by a location, going 120 miles an hour at breakneck speed down the road while you're trying to investigate in the silence. It doesn't have the foot traffic or places in like the city. Like I investigate places in Richmond City every so often, and at 2 a.m. that's when the zombies arrive, right?
Yeah.
Because that is when everybody is leaving the bar and it gets very loud outside. And then it's not until 3 a.m. that everything's quiet. So I really love the idea of being able to investigate in a location that is void of a lot of that, right? People can't just go and visit there. You have to be there with some sort of purpose and permission. And there's not much, if any. I don't know if there is, but I don't think there's any electricity there. So you're not worried about any crossfeed, worrying about EMF, anything like that. And in some instances, it almost seems like its own fun challenge of being prepared, right? It is the descent into the cave because you're going to a location that demands a little bit more than going to the local place right down the road that's got electricity and a working bathroom and a place for you to rest, and you can walk your car after a certain point and go home. But you get immersed into again what has been so touted as this tragedy of history, all these folks that were placed there because of the plague and everything, to just die, right? To just be like, I gotta get you out of here, gotta get you out of here. And so I feel like that place has a very, very interesting story to tell. And it's rough because it is, again, we go back to, what is TV about? Entertainment. And so most of the experience that we've had seeing a place like Poveglia Island is always like, oh, it's so creepy and scary. And I'm like, but weren't those people too? Didn't they have human fears and human interests? And I don't think these folks are just here innately to scare you. There must be a reason, a purpose.
Yeah. Think
So
about
I
the
think it'd be really
confusion and the fear that they were going through,
You're in your final time on Earth, and what are you doing? Being shipped on a boat out to this island to be shoved into a building that you are so unfamiliar with people that are all going through the same thing. So there is no comfort.
Yeah.
You're not going to find comfort amongst all these folks that are equally confused and scared. And so it's an interesting story to explore and tell, but I think it needs to be done so from a very compassionate perspective. And I think it'd be really cool to get to experience that. Especially with a different understanding of like, no, people probably did try. There's probably untold stories of people that were there and gave their lives to help those folks. And maybe some of them did actually give their lives. Maybe they did get sick because of that service. But, you don't know. We don't know until you go and dig. So I think it'd be really interesting.
Awesome. And before we end, do you have anything coming up that you want people to know about?
Big thing. So there's a couple things. If you are in Virginia and you want to come and hang out with me and do weird things in the dark with me, clothing is required. We do have an event at the Dunlora Inn coming up in December. We haven't announced it quite yet, but it is going to be a really interesting and fun evening. It is kind of like our nod to the year, and we close it out. We kind of have a little bit of a get together. We're going to hopefully do a gallery reading, and then kind of like not quite a ghost hunt, not quite a history tour, kind of exploration of the building. So it'll just be more of a fun time to just hang out with like-minded folks and get to explore the unknown in a little bit more of a light form, as opposed to like, all right, cut all the lights off.
Yeah.
So we're going to do that. And then January 30th and 31st, we have the Hanover Tavern Paracon. So you get to come and explore the location that has so much defined kind of my own exploration of the paranormal and history. And we're going to have a bunch of really, really great speakers there. I will be talking. My buddy Chris and I are going to be talking on a topic called The Ghosts We Carry, which is less about the, great grandma Gertrude and her ghost floating around, angry at you because you remove the doilies from the living room. But more of what are our own internal ghosts that we carry, and the people and the grief that we've carried because we've lost people, and how does that show up in investigations? How does that show up in our life? And what does that lens look like? So it's a little bit of a different topic, but we are trying to build it out in a way that does bring education and bring a different view of things. So we're going to have somebody from BFRO, Bigfoot group, and they're going to be coming and talking. We actually built out different circuits this year. So a lot of people think paranormal is just ghosts. But we have stolen that. That is not ours.
Everything.
So it is everything. And so we're going to do just that. We're going,
Awesome.
we did a Bigfoot and a Dogman panel last year that went really well. So we're going to build out its own little piece, and we're going to ensure that we have some sort of cryptid discussion every year going forward, and including this year. We have somebody from MUFON talking, and they're going to be talking about aliens and ufology. And so again, there's something else. We just wanted to why we don't need to pigeonhole ourselves here. Darcy Staniforth is going to be coming. Well, she's going to be probably virtually there, and she's going to be talking about spirit photography and how that has changed over the years and really found its niche in the Victorian era. So we're going to be doing that. We've got some skeptics coming that are going to talk a little bit about a different side of investigating. We'll have Patty Negri and Rob Thompson doing a gallery reading. I mean, we're approaching the paranormal from every conceivable perspective, so that everybody can have a place at the table. Everybody can come and hopefully learn something new, something different, and walk away with something that they can employ into their upcoming investigations.
Awesome.
Their own investigations. So.
And where can people find all of that information? Is it on Transcend Paranormal?
Yes. So you can find it at transcendparanormal.com. You can find it at hanovertavern.org. Transcend Paranormal on all of the socials. You can find me, Steve Dills, physically, mostly at Hanover Tavern. I swear to God, if you probably drove by, you'd probably see me there. And if not, it's probably a doppelganger. It's probably just my ghost. But I'm there physically a lot. And so you can find all that information there. The latest episode for the Ghost Finders just dropped. You can find it on the Spirit Channel. It's for the Hinsdale House, which is one of my favorites in upstate New York. And we just investigated that. So that's our season 12 finale. And you can find ghostfinders.com. You can find that all on the Spirit Channel and all of the socials. And then Eerie Encounters is Chris and I's potato quality podcast, or our own I guess vlog, if you will, really. But it's our own little series where we take you to haunted places, and it's much more of the comedic, crappy dad joke paranormal, where we try to show you to have fun with it too. A lot of people take it very seriously, and sometimes you can actually have fun with it.
Yeah.
So we go different routes. So
awesome. Yeah. Okay, and we'll have all that information in the comments and in the on YouTube. We'll have it in the description and everything, so people can find you. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It was amazing. Learned so much, and it's always great to, get a different or another paranormal investigator's perspective on everything. So thank you for coming on and joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Glad I left you speechless, Heather. Thank you.
One day I'll talk normal again.
She sounds great.
Listen, Heather has been decorating for Christmas all day, and she's been singing. She's got no voice now.
Yeah.
All the Christmas tunes.
That's my excuse.
She's already listened to Last Christmas and lost the game at least 10 times. So.
Oh yeah.
You're like Ernie Atwell. I don't know if you know Ernie, but he is a Christmas nut. And I love Ernie, and he is posting vintage Christmas like holiday cards, one a day leading up to Christmas. So there's
Oh,
like
that's awesome.
2 months of them.
I'm going to have to go find that. That
Oh my
sounds
God,
like so much fun.
And I'm like, well, I know it is November 1st now.
Yeah.
Because Ernie's like, it's Christmas. I'm like, okay.
That's hilarious. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. Join us next week because we will have David Sloan with us. We'll be diving into the haunting history of Robert the Doll. Super
That's
excited for
awesome.
that one.
Yeah.
Sounds amazing. We're going to explore the ghostly legends of Key West and uncover stories that will leave you questioning what's real and what lurks beyond the veil. So don't miss that chance to hear directly from the man who lived alongside one of the world's most infamous haunted objects. Thank you so much, everybody. You can find us over on Facebook. You can find us on YouTube at Ghost Education 101. And Heather, unless you have anything else to say, we are going to see you guys next week.
No, see you guys next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye,
Thank you
everybody.
so much. Good night.